Welcome to Sports Science Insight, the channel where we break down scientific studies and translate research into practical ideas for training, recovery, and human performance. Today, we are looking at the article Effects of Blood Flow Restriction Interval Training on Aerobic, Anaerobic Capacity and Muscle Strength in Healthy Adults, a systematic review and meta-analysis. This study was published in BMC Sports Science, Medicine and Rehabilitation in 2025 by Zheng and colleagues. The big question is simple. Can blood flow restriction make interval training more effective? In other words, can using cuffs during interval training help improve aerobic capacity, muscle strength, or sprint power? This is an important question because BFR training is already popular in sports performance and rehabilitation settings. But when it is combined specifically with interval training, the evidence has been less clear. So in this video, we will look at what the meta-analysis found, where BFR interval training seems to work best and where the evidence is still uncertain. And if you want more evidence-based breakdowns on exercise physiology, recovery, sports performance, and training science, subscribe to Sports Science Insight. Let's break it down. Blood flow restriction training uses cuffs or bands placed near the top of the limb, usually around the thigh or arm. The goal is not to completely block blood flow. The goal is to partially restrict blood flow in a controlled way. This creates a different internal environment during exercise. The working muscle receives less oxygen, venous return is slowed, and metabolic byproducts such as lactate may accumulate more than usual. In simple terms, the muscle experiences more metabolic stress, even when the external workload is not extremely high. This stress may contribute to adaptations related to aerobic capacity, muscle activation, fast twitch fiber recruitment, and strength development, but it is important to be careful here. This does not mean BFR is magic. It means BFR changes the training stimulus, it makes the body respond to exercise in a different way, and the effectiveness depends on how the protocol is applied. This was not a single training study. It was a systematic review and meta-analysis, which means the authors collected and analyzed results from multiple studies. The review followed PRISMA guidelines and was registered in Prospero. The researchers included 24 studies with a total of 607 healthy adults. A detail is important here. These were not only athletes. The participants ranged from untrained adults to trained individuals, including cyclists, swimmers, runners, basketball players, soccer players, and other physically active groups. The researchers compared BFR interval training with interval training without blood flow restriction. So the key question was not simply whether interval training works. The question was, does adding blood flow restriction provide an extra benefit? The main outcomes were aerobic capacity, anaerobic capacity, and muscle strength. The main results can be summarized in three parts. First, aerobic capacity improved. The effect was statistically significant but small. The pooled effect size was 0.33. That means BFR interval training may provide a small improvement in oxygen-based performance, such as VO2 max or VO2 peak. Second, muscle strength improved. This was the strongest result. The pooled effect size was 0.61, which is considered a moderate effect. So the clearest practical signal from this meta-analysis was improved muscle strength. Third, anaerobic capacity was unclear. Peak power output did not significantly improve. The effect size was minus 0.07, which is trivial and not significant. Mean power output also did not improve significantly. So the message is not that BFR interval training improves everything. The more accurate message is this: BFR interval training appears useful for aerobic capacity and muscle strength, but the evidence for anaerobic power is still uncertain. One of the most interesting findings came from the subgroup analysis. The authors compared different training intensities. BFR combined with low to moderate intensity interval training showed a stronger aerobic signal than BFR combined with high intensity interval training. For aerobic capacity, the low to moderate intensity group showed a moderate effect size of 0.56. The high-intensity group showed a smaller and non-significant effect size of 0.2t. But we need to interpret this carefully. This does not mean HIIT is useless. It does not mean high-intensity training should be avoided. It means that when BFR is added, more intensity is not always better. If the workout is already very intense, adding blood flow restriction may increase discomfort and fatigue without creating a bigger adaptation. For aerobic gains, the best strategy may be to pair BFR with low to moderate intensity intervals where the cuff creates enough internal stress without adding excessive mechanical load. The practical message is simple. With BFR, the protocol matters. The strength results were one of the most relevant findings of the study. BFR interval training produced a moderate and significant improvement in muscle strength. This is important because strength gains usually require high mechanical tension, heavy loads, or very demanding sprint work. BFR may help create a strong internal stimulus without always needing heavy external loading, but again, we need precision. The article does not support the idea of massive strength spikes for everyone. A better interpretation is that strength improvements were moderate and more consistent in certain conditions. For example, interventions lasting 6 weeks or more showed stronger strength effects than shorter interventions. Trained participants also appeared to benefit more than untrained participants. The possible mechanisms may differ depending on the intensity. With low to moderate intensity intervals, BFR may support strength gains through metabolic stress and hypertrophy related processes. With high intensity intervals, it may increase neuromuscular recruitment and challenge fast twitch fibers. But the authors also note that some mechanisms still need more direct evidence. So the safe conclusion is this: BFR interval training seems promising for strength, especially when applied consistently and with a well-designed protocol. Now comes the important reality check. BFR interval training did not significantly improve anaerobic capacity in this meta-analysis. Peak power output was not significantly improved. Mean power output was also not significantly improved. This matters because many people may assume that if BFR makes training harder, it must automatically improve sprint power. But the evidence does not show that yet. There are a few possible explanations. First, BFR changes blood flow, and maximal sprint power depends on rapid force production and very high neuromuscular output. In some cases, restricting blood flow may not help that type of explosive performance. Second, many anaerobic studies were short, often lasting only a few weeks. That may not be enough time to produce clear sprint power adaptations. Third, some tests were laboratory based, such as Wingate style cycling tests. These may not fully reflect real game sprinting, field movement, or sport specific acceleration. The most important point is this: we should not say BFR interval training does not work for anaerobic power. A more accurate statement is that the current evidence is not strong enough yet. For sprint power, more studies with larger samples and sport-specific testing are still needed. This slide gives a practical interpretation of the findings, but it should not be seen as a universal prescription. BFR is not a one-size-fits-all tool. Calf pressure, exercise intensity, training status, calf timing, and intervention duration all matter. For aerobic capacity, the evidence suggests that BFR may work well with low to moderate intensity interval training. This may allow athletes or active people to improve oxygen-based fitness without adding excessive mechanical stress. For muscle strength, the results suggest that longer interventions, especially those lasting 6 weeks or more, may be more effective. The article also discusses pressure strategies. Some studies used fixed pressure. Others used pressure relative to arterial occlusion pressure. In practice, individualized pressure is often preferred because limb size, blood pressure, and vascular characteristics can vary between people. But the article also shows that protocols are still inconsistent across studies. So the best message is this: BFR interval training should be individualized and applied carefully. It is not just about putting cuffs on and training hard. The details decide the outcome. So how could this science be applied in the real world? For endurance-focused athletes, such as runners, cyclists, or swimmers, BFR combined with low to moderate intensity interval training may be a useful option. It may help improve aerobic capacity while keeping external loads relatively controlled. For strength-focused athletes, BFR interval training may also be useful, especially when the goal is to stimulate the muscles without relying only on heavy lifting. But there is one important caution. Although BFR is often discussed in rehabilitation, this specific meta-analysis focused on healthy adults. So we should be careful before applying these findings directly to injured athletes or return to play situations. That requires professional evaluation and individualized programming. The final takeaway is this: BFR interval training is promising. It may improve aerobic capacity by a small amount and muscle strength by a moderate amount. But it is not a magic shortcut for sprint power, and it is not a protocol to apply randomly. The science points in a practical direction, but the details matter: intensity, pressure, duration, training status, and safety. If this video helped you understand the science behind BFR interval training, subscribe to Sports Science Insight. Here, we analyze new scientific studies and turn them into practical knowledge for athletes, coaches, students, and anyone interested in evidence-based performance. Leave your comment below. Would you use BFR interval training for endurance, strength, or not at all? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.